What's up, Jurassic Coast fans? My name is Sam and I work for the Jurassic Coast Trust. And I have a little story to tell you to celebrate the paleontological heritage of our wonderful World Heritage Site. Now, this story takes inspiration from a Roman myth that if you sleep with a fool's gold ammonite underneath your pillow, you may see the future in your dreams. Now, it's based around the area of Charmouth and Lyme Regis because, of course, you find an awful lot of fool's gold ammonites on the beaches there. And it's also an attempt to say something about our relationship with fossils without talking about science. So, here goes. Once, long ago and far away, before Saxons sailed and Vikings voyaged, there lived a merchant. He was born the son of a vast empire that stretched north, south, east and west to the very corners of the world. And it was to one of these corners that he went to seek his fortune. He had heard about the wonders that lay outside of his city walls, and so he travelled the long road north in search of them, finally crossing a narrow sea to arrive in a damp, green, earthy sort of place. And he found not his fortune, but farms, towns, and people very much like the ones he had left behind. And as the cold bit into his bones, his heart descended into bitterness and disappointment. He wandered for a while between settlements, doing a little bit of trade here, a little bit of trade there, nothing much to speak of, until one evening he was drinking alone in a tavern. And he overheard a rowdy group of visitors come in for their supper. They spoke of a land to the west, of fine soil for farming, of building stone, of minerals and fine metals, and money that flowed from hand to hand like wine from a jug. And of course, the merchant pricked up his ears at this news. He wandered over to the group and inquired of them how he might travel to that place. And he was in luck, for they were actually part of a caravan on their way upon that road. He paid a small fee and was allowed to join their group. That night, the merchant slept well, his hopes rekindled. The next morning, after an early start, it went well to begin with. His companions jested and joked and tried to scare him with stories of the black magic of the wild tribespeople in the west, but the merchant laughed. But as the days passed, the landscape and the people in it grew more wild, and the merchant grew afraid. And so it was that they came to a small village by the sea. The caravan stopped to take on supplies, and the merchant took a short, dusty path down to the beach to wash his hot feet in the sea. Standing upon the shoreline, the merchant glanced in either direction and saw the coast sweep away into the haze, and not a soul in sight. The sun beamed down from the sky, and the black cliffs loomed behind him. The air was heavy and oppressive. Glancing down amongst the stones, the merchant caught a glint, a shine, a gleam of gold. Quickly he reached down and plucked the thing from beneath the pebbles. But no, he knew enough of metals to know that this was not actual gold, but fool's gold. Still, the object was most strange indeed, a perfect spiral coiling in upon itself. He slipped it into his pocket, and by the time he had rejoined the caravan in the village, he had forgotten all about it. But that night, the dreams began. To begin with, they were little more than a restless feeling and waking with heavy eyelids, as if he hadn't slept at all. But very soon, these dreams became nightmares from which he could not wake, always starting with a feeling of being drowned, but never dying. Death didn't come, only the monsters. Hideous, lizard-like creatures with teeth like swords, disgusting, slimy things that writhed their tentacles upon his flesh. Sometimes the creatures would fight one another, and his mouth would be filled with the acrid taste of their blood. And by dawn, he could barely tell himself apart from the demons that haunted him. Of course, he sought help from his companions, but they, half believing their own stories of black magic, abandoned him on the road. He was alone in a strange land, friendless. He had no choice but to return to the last place they stopped, the small village by the sea. He walked alone by day, and at night as the sun sank in the sky, he did everything he could to stay awake. But as it disappeared below the horizon, sleep would take him, and when he slept, he would dream. Eventually, though, after he didn't know how many days, finally he arrived in the village and collapsed in the road. Senseless, he was lifted gently by the village people and taken to the home of a nearby healer. And there, for the first time in days and days, he slept in peace. When he woke, he saw a young woman sat just in the shadows to the side of the small, modest house. He jerked upwards with an inquiring look on his face. The healer said to him, "You are safe here, but when you leave, the dreams will return." "Am I cursed?" the merchant asked. "They are ghosts," came the reply. "Their stories are strange and terrible, but they belong to an age yet to come. You must return what you have taken." And then the merchant slipped his hand into his pocket and felt the cold spiral of the golden object he found on the beach. Taking his leave of the healer, he took again that short, dusty path to stand once more upon the shoreline, stretching in either direction into the haze, not a soul in sight. Taking the golden spiral out of his pocket, he looked upon it one last time, thinking to himself of the stories it contained and the destiny it held for those yet to come. "I wish them better luck than I," he said aloud. And then taking the thing, he cast it out across the beach, where it clattered amongst the stones to bother him no more. The curse was lifted, so he turned on his heel, headed back to the road, and journeyed again into the west, where he lived happily ever after. I hope you enjoyed that story, and I hope you enjoy any time you come down to the Jurassic Coast to search for your own fool's gold ammonites, and who knows, maybe it'll have its own secrets to tell you.